On this season of the Keep Growing podcast, we're digging for victory. Here's your host, John Morgan.
It's amazing how much the world has changed since I released the last episode just 4 months ago. At the time, I was starting to plan this season of the podcast. I had a great plan, too. With the relaunch of our weekly live show on Facebook, Bob's Live, it's Tuesdays at 5 p.m., that's facebook.com/BobsMarket. Check it out. Anyhow, I was planning on doing a bunch of in-person interviews in March and April that I could use for the podcast and also use as video segments for our live show. Well, coronavirus killed those plans, and I was forced to completely rework this season of the podcast. Of course, in comparison to the current situation, this little podcast really isn't all that important. Like many in the horticulture industry, this is our peak season. Back when I released the end of season 2 at the beginning of December, we already had plants growing for the spring. Bob's, along with thousands of other growers, have plants that will be ready to sell right at the peak of the shutdown. And unfortunately, plants have expiration dates. Locally, we're able to continue operating as an essential business, with some extra social distancing, of course. And that's because the governors of West Virginia and Ohio recognize the importance of being able to grow your own food during these uncertain times. However, some states like Michigan and Pennsylvania, where we operate a wholesale location in Pittsburgh, have declared that gardening isn't essential and have forced garden centers and greenhouses to close. And although this gets under my skin, both as a gardener and a bit of a libertarian, this isn't a political podcast. So the question comes down to, what can we do about coronavirus? Well, not really anything beyond our collective attempts to flatten the curve. And right now it looks like that's working. We're all wading into the unknown together, but apart. The one thing we can all do is search for some normalcy among the chaos. For me, that normalcy comes in the garden. It turns out tons of other people are thinking the same thing too. To help you be a little more self-sufficient this season, I'm going to be covering a crash course in gardening here on the podcast. All you'll need are minimal tools and a patch of land to get started. We're going to go old school with a victory garden.
Victory gardens. That's the answer. We can grow food for victory in our own backyards and even in vacant lots where perhaps only weeds flourished before. Because so long as this war lasts, great quantities of food must be grown. Anywhere and everywhere we can find good soil to nourish the seeds, good soil and sunshine to make them grow. Still, it takes more than earth and sun to produce the right kind of victory garden. It requires a knowledge of how to plan and tend it, and a willingness to work it with interest and enthusiasm. From garden magazines and garden advertising, we can get the advice of professional experts on how to derive the most from backyard planting. And scores of seed and nursery houses can supply us with other vital gardening information. Then, each spring, we can start our gardens with good seeds. Plant them in rich, well-tilled soil, away from shadowing houses or trees. Out in the open, where they can be warmed by life-giving sunshine. And, as our gardens grow, they must be regularly cared for, faithfully weeded from planting to harvest, enriched, perhaps, with one of the magic plant foods science has given us, rigidly protected from insects and plant-killing disease, and watered, of course, because Mother Earth gets thirsty now and then. Yes, for the duration, at least, it's our job to grow food for our own tables.
That clip from a World War II newsreel might have sounded outdated a few months ago. Needing to provide food for ourselves? Oh, we could just swing by the local big box mart. It's open 24/7, and they always have everything we're looking for, from toilet paper to TV dinners. Oh my. Times have changed just a little bit. Turns out Victory Gardens are trendy again out of necessity. In fact, just a week ago, in the Washington Post, writer Adrienne Higgins wrote an article entitled "How to Grow Your Own Food in a Modern Day Victory Garden." She wrote, "One silver lining of the coronavirus lockdown is that it comes at the start of growing season. Between now and the fall, folks have a chance to coax food from the soil while also feeding the soul. This year, a vegetable garden may also provide one thing we all seem to be lacking at the moment: control over our lives. It includes the satisfaction of raising nutritious and delicious food, exercising outdoors while socially distancing, relieving pressure on the nation's food supply, passing essential knowledge onto our children, and growing extra to share with others. At the very least, it's a constructive distraction in a confined environment." So Victory Gardens it is. The next important question is, what does a modern day Victory Garden look like? As I said, I want to go minimal. If you already have raised beds and a permaculture setup or something along those lines, that's great. You're already ahead. However, what if you just have a patch of grass? Both tools and supplies are somewhat hard to come by right now. I read in an industry publication a couple weeks ago that seed sales are up an astonishing 40%. That's just insane for our industry. I know my own order from Burpee was delayed because of demand. As one journalist put it, seeds are the new toilet paper. And in the New York Times, Kendra Pierre-Louis wrote on March 28th, "Panic buying comes for the seeds." She said, "It had to be a near universal urge to garden, I decided. For me, the need to buy seeds and garden felt like part of the broader suite of practices I'd taken up: running, meditating, jumping rope, to stay calm." But then I talked to Jamie Madikow, the president and CEO of Burpee, the huge seed seller whose packets are ubiquitous at hardware stores. His company has seen an uptick too. It started as early as December, but really ramped up over the past month. Mr. Madikow told me that people aren't just buying any old seeds. "I would say vegetables are driving it," he said, distinguishing the demand from flowers and other plants. "There's a really high interest in vegetables." Here at Bob's, we're trying to fill the demand for vegetable starts and seeds as best as possible. I know traffic on our website is twice what it normally is this time of year. We also shifted our production toward vegetables, but that's a bit like trying to steer the Titanic. As I said at the start of the podcast, some crops were started months ago, and newly transplanted veggies will take time to grow to a finished product. Also, as our IT guy, I've been busy pounding away at a system for curbside pickups at our stores. Hopefully we'll be rolling it out soon also. I know folks are chomping at the bit to get tomatoes and other veggies in the ground, but this is April. Here in Zone 6, there's still a significant chance of a killing freeze for summer veggies. Now's the time to plant cool weather crops and prepare your garden beds. In the next episode, we're going to prepare the battlefield. How can you till up a garden patch if you don't own a tiller? Well, you'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, are you willing to muster up the courage to grow your own victory garden like your grandparents did?
They're finding out that it's not only easy to make a victory garden, it's a great way to have fun and get plenty of healthful exercise. They're discovering that the closer they get to the good earth, and the more they drink in fresh air and sunshine, the more courage and strength they have to face today's problems and meet them like true Americans.
If you're ready to face the challenge of growing a victory garden with me this summer, head over to our show notes where you can download a printable certificate inspired by wartime victory garden certificates during World War II. Put it in your window, or laminate it for display in your garden. Challenge your neighbors to grow a victory garden too. Until next time, start to plan your garden, and of course, keep growing.
Submit your gardening questions at bobsmarket.com/keepgrowing. The Keep Growing podcast is produced by John Morgan. Copyright 2020 Bob's Market and Greenhouses Incorporated.